All members are present. The first thing we will do is approve, oh, Maquiba is not present. And the first thing we will do is approve the minutes from last month.
I move that we approve the August 18th board meeting minutes.
I second.
And in the past, Nicole has called the roll.
Okay, sorry, I was just reading through the chat. Kim,
Yes.
Rafi,
Yes.
Luis,
Yes.
and Susan.
Yes. Okay, we will start with fire department business and the report on monthly statistics and training.
Great, thank you. For monthly statistics, we are right around our normal averages, with IU still being down below their normal averages for the year. No significant incidents to report. I do want to make notice that we did have a technical rescue, which is a confined space. So that is not something that's normal, but it was not a highly critical one. It was a person trapped in a storm drain that we had to get out. Beyond that, training, we are slightly below our normal averages. We are down 4 positions right now in physical positions, but we also have several people out on vacation and otherwise, but we are still on track to meet our annual goal for fire and EMS training. And we are still dealing with COVID issues on our inspections. We are down 1 inspector. So we are still not planning on being able to meet anywhere near our annual goal on fire inspections or public education events for 2020. Any questions on statistics?
You can move on to letters of appreciation and commendation.
I don't see the presentation on the screen. I don't think there were any of note. There may have been one in the packet, but nothing of note.
Okay, any general business?
For general business, we are moving into our new lease space. That will come down also into expenditures, which we can get into the details on that if you prefer. But this has been a really interesting project. We were leasing space from IU Health at $1 square foot per year, which if you know anything about real estate, that is an extraordinary rate. We are now dealing with market rates, but we still had the need for the storage for additional office space. And this new lease space that the flooring is going in today as we speak will be opening here relatively soon. And that is going to give us some much needed space. And once it's open, I'd be more than happy to schedule a tour if anybody is interested from the board to come and see the new area. Engine 1 is also here in Bloomington, the replacement engine, which again will also be another expense that you should be seeing in the next budget cycle for you, or the next claim cycle. But it'll be checked in, and we're looking at potentially the end of the month or beginning of next month for it to go into service. With that, we've only got 1 more large vehicle to replace, and then the entire fleet will be new at that point. And that concludes general business.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
Chief Moore, can you, and this is probably a general, just a question related to the wildfires that have been taking place in, Washington, Oregon, and California. I know that one of the I guess issues that have come up is just firefighter fatigue in those departments. Has I guess the state of Indiana, and I guess more specifically, the city of Bloomington, been contacted, or firefighters have, I guess I guess, with your consent, or whatever it is to call and assist or, that sort of thing. If you get where I'm going, just.
Yep, I picked up what you're laying down. So the city of Bloomington, we only belong to one deployable team, which is Indiana Task Force 1. Our firefighters are not certified for that level of wildland firefighting. Here in Indiana, we don't deal with that. It is a very extensive and grueling process. We do have a few firefighters that are partially certified, but with us not being a part of a national network to deploy on that, we would not ever be sending local resources. We do have one member of the department that has been assigned to Indiana Task Force 1, and that person is deployed out in assistance for things like the hurricanes and others. But we have a signed agreement with that deployable task force for up to 10% of our department. If needed, they could recall 10% of our department to help with a state level emergency or a national level emergency, as long as we're certified to handle whatever that is. And again, we're not certified for the wildland firefighting to that level.
Thank you.
Do you have any upcoming large purchases or expenditures?
Yes, we do. We have the new engine, which will be just around $600,000. The lease space, once the construction on it is finished, there will be somewhere in the realm of about $20,000 for furniture, flooring, and then paying the contractor for some of the items that we've asked for. We have an order of gear, about 25 sets of gear, which is in the realm of almost $70,000 that are due for delivery. And the only other larger, it's not as large, but we did just test 105 candidates for our new hire process. And those tests will be paid for out of city funds. But they will also be reimbursed by the people that took the tests unless they had a fiscal impact waiver. So you should see a charge of almost $4,000 for testing.
And then any personnel issues?
Okay, so we are currently down 4 positions. I have one that's essentially on terminal leave waiting for a medical retirement. We have 2 on light duty, one of which being a workers' comp. And I think that covers it for that. I did want to update you on our hiring process. Again, we had 222 applicants to start. 105 have now tested. The testing process is closed. If they did not test, they will not be able to move on. Initial diversity numbers for that, of the 222, we were about 17%. And now that testing has concluded, with the people that are still in the applicant pool, we're at 16.7% diversity left over. So we're on par with the general population and the diversity profile. Moving forward, we will get test results within the next 2 to 14 days. And at that point, if they've passed the test, then we'll be moving on to the interview phase. And then we will be coming to the board to approve our hiring list, which we're looking at potentially, if we can work it out this year, we may try another recruit school, but definitely by March, we'll be starting a new recruit school to fill our vacancies.
Could I ask you a question on that? Chief, could I ask you, so what happened? So we have 100 plus candidates. Are they then placed on a list 1 to 100? Do you rank them and they go down the list from 1 to 100 and get as many as you need to accept?
Yes. So what we do is we take their raw score from the written test. They will go through a panel interview. We have 7 on our internal hiring committee, which consists of a representation of the entire department. I will also say we made a special attempt to ensure that the little bit of diversity we have in our department is represented on that hiring committee. Those scores will be added to their written test score. And at that point, we'll be able to rank them on a list of from 1 to however many people pass. And then we'll bring that list to you ranked, and then we go from the top of the list to the bottom of the list when we do job offers.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So if I may ask you, so the ranking, and take it from one who tries to rank students all the time and doesn't always succeed because it's really hard. How do you rank? You give them a test, you give them some other things, and then how do you decide from the 1 to the 100? How does that work? Could you briefly in our time, don't take a lot of time. I'm really curious because I don't even know how you begin to do that.
Yeah, so based on the process we run, we end up having basically test scores, metrics. So the written test score, we get from 0 to 100% from the testing company. That score is recorded. We also, when we do the interview process, there are the questions that everyone asks, they're all ranked. So those 7 people on the hiring committee, give them a score from 1 to 5 on every question. And then that becomes a raw score that is then calculated. So those 2 mathematical scores are added together. And then the highest score is number 1. The lowest score is the last person on the list.
Okay. I have lots of questions, but I'm gonna save them. I'm curious to see what the list looks like, but I'm happy to wait. We don't have to take time now to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the new business, which is the verbal certification of the payroll. Can the chiefs certify that the payroll is correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And then we will move on to police department business, and we'll start with the new hire candidate.
Yes, Captain Pedigo could not be here tonight, so he has asked that you move forward with approving the hire of Franklin Jake Yost.
Okay, I think everybody received the information about Jake. Does anyone have any questions? And if,
I do a quick question.
go ahead.
And they're all quick questions, I warn you. So in reference to, we usually do I don't remember, we usually do your personnel after. So you're gonna tell us, I'm just curious, if you could tell us now, how we're below, is that correct? We used to be 100, then we went to 105, but then we were down to 95 at some point.
Yeah. So right now we're down 10.
Right.
We have 3 certified people starting the beginning of October, and then this latest one, and then we have a couple people. We have one that's off on military that's coming back, and we have, I believe, 1 or 2 on light duty still.
Okay, thank you.
Would someone like to make a motion? And did it say on here, we don't have to do an effective date, right? It's just asking that the that the hiring process continue to move forward.
Yes.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Mute myself. Yes, I would like to move for the approval of Franklin Jake Yost in the hire. Bloomington Police Department.
Second.
Was that a second?
Yes, it was.
Great. So it looks like Maquiba joined us as well. Welcome, Maquiba. Susan,
Yes. Yes.
Rafi,
Yes.
Luis,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
and Maquiba, you're on mute if you also are able to join in.
I don't know what I'm saying yet.
We are talking about the hiring of the new police officer. The approval,
And it's fine to
And
just
he-
abstain.
That's what I thought.
Abstain,
Okay, I'll
yeah.
abstain at this moment. Abstain.
okay, that hiring will move forward. And we'll move on to the police report on monthly statistics and training.
So you all have that. I'm not sure how to share the screen. So the calls for service, again, in October were down from last year. They have been down every month since March, over the previous month last year. Nuisance calls, 55% of those calls were noise related and 29% were disturbance related calls. If you look at major categories of crimes against persons, those are down. Also, this period, crimes against property are down, as well as traffic accidents being up. Going into more detail, the crimes against persons, aggravated assaults were slightly up for the period. Intimidation was slightly up. Simple assaults were down, as were sex offenses. In the crimes against property, burglaries were down, forgeries were down, frauds were slightly up, vehicle thefts were down, robberies were down, and thefts were slightly up over the last period. Moving to adult arrests. Arrests for the month of August were almost half of what they were last year. And again, those have been down almost all year except for the month of February, where they were just slightly higher than last year. Juvenile referrals are also down. That has been the trend most of the year also, except for the month of February, where they were up by 1 over the previous year. Domestic violence cases were down in August. And again, those have been down except for early in the year when they were slightly up. Hate crimes, the hate crime reporting period is July to September. So at the end of September, we will prepare the quarter report on hate crimes. Trends, business burglaries. We had a series in the Grimes and South Walnut area. We had a series of burglaries on the Hillside Drive area where solar panels were stolen. And we had in the Dunn and Palmer area, which is still in that Hillside area, where there were some garage burglaries. Training report, there was 1,037 and a half hours of training. Some of the highlights, we had legal updates from the prosecutor's office. We had implicit bias training. We also had our mandatory annual training, which includes suicide by cop, active shooter, and trauma in the brain. Our community engagement activities for the month, we had 5 for a total of 7 hours that involved 11 officers. You can see in the notes, we spent some time in the Crestmont housing area by officers, by our social worker, and by our neighborhood resource specialists. Basically just up there, they've been passing out popsicles and water bottles and things up there. Our police social worker had a total of 40 referrals. She had a total of 125 contacts. You can see in the notes some of the things, some of the highlights, picked up and delivered food to homebound clients, worked with Centerstone a lot, and supported or assisted some community members with support groups for after the death of a significant other. Neighborhood resource specialists had a total of 66 calls for service, and those are listed in the reports as to what those were. I also want to give you an update on the Stride Center. It opened in August. If you're not familiar with what that is a crisis diversion center for people that the officers might come in contact with that may have committed a minor crime or may have some other issue, such as a mental health issue or a substance use issue, that had come in contact with the police, that basically needed services more than going to jail. That so far, the last I heard of all the agencies in the county, BPD was the only police department that had referred anybody there. And I believe last week the numbers there were like 9, I think, referrals total so far. It's new, it's starting out. The Centerstone is running it. They're encouraged by the early results of its use. They are starting to see some people who are returning on their own once we had taken them there. So that's a positive sign, people seeking some kind of treatment. So that's it for the stats.
Letters of appreciation and commendation.
So we have one from July that just wanted, it was from a local person, wanted to know that police were appreciated for their service. Says, please continue to keep our streets safe. There was another one, it looks like, from a young person that wanted to thank the officers for what they do. There was an email that was commending Officer Andrew Dawson for an investigation that he did. She talked about his professionalism and they wanted to just alert us to that. Actually, this person who wrote this was a chief of police somewhere else. So he understands the importance of letting other chiefs know the good work that their officers do. And I believe that's it.
Okay.
I wanted to say something with the letters of appreciation. I was able to invite, sorry, I got to really my head anyways, but I was able to invite Chief over to a conversation with the NAACP. And I was hoping that we had a letter of appreciation in there, but we wanted to, the chief came over and talked to a group of people at the NAACP, and he offered some opportunities for people to share their concerns and talk. And so just wanted to, on behalf of the NAACP, show appreciation for that too.
Yeah, Chief Kickoff, what is a Leo family that's referred to in the?
Law enforcement officer.
Ah, thank you.
Susan, could I very quickly, in that vein, I wanted to say last night we had the National Latinx Heritage Month kickoff, and it's on Facebook Live somewhere. And yes, I was the MC and I killed it, in case you were wondering. But that is not the reason why I am telling you. I am telling you because Gabriela Esquivel, the police officer, she was invited to speak and she did a fantastic job, and I wanted you both to know that. She was tremendous. And we really appreciated having her. She went both in Spanish and English, and she spoke for maybe 15 minutes. And you can go watch it. It's on Facebook. It's taped somewhere. Anyway, thank you for her for doing what she did. It was tremendous.
She's a great person. So
it was great to have her. Thank you.
Are you holding your dog?
It's a cat, I think.
Okay. All right.
Don't leave me alone.
We'll move on to general business.
I don't really have any general business. McQueen talked about the NAACP. I was going to mention that, but she kind of covered that. It was a nice opportunity to talk about some things recently and let them ask questions. And so Again, that's something that I'm more than willing to do for different organizations. They just, all they have to do is ask. So
Then any large upcoming purchases.
there may still be one for the storage building, but I think those have all been taken care of. But you might see, there might still be one outstanding for that.
Okay.
You're also going to start seeing some trickle through for cars. For both
Cars.
like the purchase of and the
Replacement.
upfit for, yeah.
And these are just replacement vehicles.
Yes.
Okay. All right, then personnel issues.
Kind of addressed it earlier. We have 3 that are getting ready to start the beginning of October. The one you just approved probably will start sometime in October. And we still have some openings.
Then I had a couple of questions for the chief. It's not a good time. I wanted to ask, we were asked from the public, and I wanted to ask you, one, the piece that came out in the IDS about police officers wearing masks, and I wanted to ask you about that. And the second,
so we bought all of our officers masks. You can see this is an example of it. That was early on for a while. The police department, the fire department didn't wear masks as regular as other city employees just due to the nature of our job. But a few weeks ago, the mayor, when the mayor lowered the gathering size, we went to wearing more masks. Again, it's a situation where we don't require them to wear them in their cars. We don't require them to wear them when they're outside and they're distance from people. But what happened with the IDS was there was a particular IU student who on more than one occasion would follow officers around and video them trying to bait them into something. The officer that was on the video didn't violate any of our policies. He was talked to about his conversation with that young man, which I also had a conversation with the dean of students about that student's behavior, because interfering with the police can be a crime. But our office, it was new. The officers are more aware about wearing masks now, and I don't think that it should be a problem anymore.
thank you. Another question I had also about no-knock warrants. Do we do those?
Yes, we have done them in the past. We do not do them very often. They are for high-risk situations that mostly involve violent felons that we are looking for. A no-knock warrant is kind of a misnomer because you still have to knock and announce. You just don't have to wait the same amount of time that you would wait on a normal warrant. Most of those high-risk warrants we do that would be a no-knock warrant also require additional judicial approval to do. We most of the time have our tactical team, which is our CERT team, serve those. So there is also a precaution that we take where we have a marked squad car that also is on a PA system announcing that we're there with a search warrant. We take every precaution that we can to make sure that when we do those, that there is no one that is in harm's way. Obviously, we can't make 100% guarantee that that's the case, but we do a lot of surveillance prior to serving those types of warrants to make sure that the target of that warrant is the only person inside the house. And we also try to take every opportunity to apprehend whoever we might be looking for in one of those situations out on the street where they're not inside a house, to prevent other people from getting hurt.
Chief, may I ask you on that point? So I understand you correctly. So when, for example, the one time we spoke about the CERT vehicle on the new PA system, is that what you meant? Like you bring the PA system and you announce?
Well, that was not a no-knock warrant situation, but that would be a type of situation where we would use those tools that we have to make sure that the person inside knows that we're out there.
So you said they're no-knock warrants, but they're basically you knock and then you just come in. Is
Yes.
that?
We,
Wow.
we still announce our presence. You know, I think what everyone is focusing on is what happened in Louisville, where someone was killed in that situation. And the big differences here is, so what happened in that situation is when they were serving the warrant and forcing entry, someone from inside the residence fired out at the police and hit an officer. Then what happened was that the police indiscriminately fired into that dwelling, not knowing who was in there. That is not something that we would do. Some of you may have been on the board when we shared the body cam video from probably a couple years ago of the sexual assault that was happening on, I think it was 13th Street, where we got a call from one of the roommates who had locked herself in a bedroom and said, my two roommates are being assaulted. The officer got there and knocked on the door, and he was immediately shot at from inside the house. The officer did not return fire. He took cover. The two suspects inside the house committing that assault broke out a window and jumped out of the house. And as they ran, they shot at the officer. The officer actually saw them and engaged them. Again, what happened in Kentucky was that they just indiscriminately fired blindly into this residence. That isn't anything that we would do. That is not our training. And that is certainly not anything that we approve of.
Chief, final question, if I may ask you. I know that we've adopted most of Obama's 20th century policing recommendations. Was no-knock warrants part of that initiative?
I don't remember that being in there. I don't think it got that specific about no-knock warrants.
I'm only asking because I know we've adopted all of them but one. We almost adopted all of us. I was wondering if, and I know that that wasn't one of the things we haven't adopted yet. So I wondered. Thank you.
Any other questions or follow-up? Okay, we'll move on to the CERT ARV deployment report.
We had none last month.
None?
Yeah, 0.
Okay, and then we are going to move on to the public comment section. And I guess, will it be Heather that will tell people when they are able to make their comments, and the comments will be limited to 3 minutes?
No,
Or
it will be me, Nikki.
Okay.
We do have some members of the public here, so if you'd like, you can use the raise hand feature, or you can send me a message as the host, and I'd be happy to unmute you. So we'll just give a few minutes for the public to do that if they want. Okay, we do have someone who would like to make a comment. Oh, I think she just signed off, so maybe she'll come back in a moment. I apologize.
Actually, can we go back and do one thing? We were going to do another pillar from the 21st century policing report. If we can, I meant to do that in general business.
Okay. Let's go, if everyone's okay, we'll do the general business while we're waiting to see if this woman gets back online. Go ahead.
She has returned. If Yes, and she is ready to speak, so I'm going to unmute her if that's all right.
Okay, let's do that.
Hi, sorry about that. I just wanted to, my name is Molly Stewart. I'm a resident of Bloomington, and I just wanted to respond to the chief of police statement about the student interfering with the police and that could have been a criminal charge. I would just like to make a statement that I don't think that that's really in the spirit of the law about interfering with the police. Observing what the police are doing and in public should not be considered interfering, and the officer was not required to respond to his questions. So I don't want people in this city to think that they can't ask police questions about the police complying with local laws and mandates. Police are also required to do that. So I would not want to hear the chief of police or any other police officer say that somebody asking about a police officer complying with the law is interfering with law enforcement. I don't think that's accurate. Thank you. That's all my time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? No, Nikki?
I have not received any messages or seen any hands go up.
Okay, then we're going to go back to general police business and talk about the 21st century reporting, or I'm not sure what the appropriate name is.
It is a part of the final report on 21st century policing and our report to you from that. We're going to go over Pillar 4 today, which is entitled Community Policing and Crime Reduction. Part of the recommendations here, actually a lot of the recommendations here, are laid on agencies not law enforcement or not BPD. They'd be the federal government or some of the schools. But some of the ones that do concern us is that recommendation 4.1 is that law enforcement should develop and adopt policies and strategies that reinforce the importance of community engagement in managing public safety. I think we've definitely gone over with you over the months the number of community engagement events that we routinely had prior to COVID. It's become a little more challenging as of late, but we still maintain a lot of outreach, usually to smaller groups than what we've been doing before, but there are some larger groups that we're doing via Zoom and other, type activities. One of the action items below is that law enforcement should consider adopting preferences for least harm resolutions, such as diversion programs or warnings and citations in lieu of arrest for minor infractions. I think the chief summarized earlier the STRIDE program, which is new. It's yet but another option for the officers to put people into treatment as opposed to actually incarcerating them. But even instead, we've moved in a lot of our misdemeanor arrests are done via citation at this point in time rather than actually incarcerating folks. So you'll see our numbers for physical arrests go down. The numbers for the arrests fluctuate month to month, as you've seen, but a lot of those numbers you're seeing are still arrests by citation, so the people are not actually physically incarcerated. The STRIDE Center is, again, another extension of that. Community and policing should be infused throughout the culture and structure of the organization. That is exactly what we do from the first week that the officers are with us. They go through what's called a probationary officers training course, where we highlight community policing entire concept and how that works for us and how we implement those things. As we continue through, again, most of the rest of this is laid on the federal government. Some of it talks about the schools and interactions with juveniles. Since we do not maintain school resource officers, those don't necessarily apply to us. Some of the things, though, that do is where we talk about community policing emphasizes working with neighborhood residents and co-producing public safety. Again, you've seen that time and time again from us where we're having neighborhood resource specialists. We have officers go to neighborhood meetings. We have a sergeant assigned to the neighborhood watch program. So it's something we've been doing for at least 15 years, although the neighborhood resource specialists are new. They are a continued outgrowth of that effort and going forward. Some of the things we do get into with the juveniles, however, is 4.5.2. Law enforcement agencies should engage youth and communities in joint training with law enforcement, citizens academies, ride-along, problem-solving teams, community action teams, and quality of life. Again, COVID's kind of impacted some of that to a degree. We're not accepting civilian riders at this point in time. Unfortunately, we had to cancel this year's the very successful Teen Academy. My daughter was heartbroken because she loves to go to that. And every year that is full to overflowing with, last year we had 56 teens that were with the officers for a week. And they had just a tremendous amount of fun. We always have more applications and we have to expand the program every year. And I just think that's wonderful because the people really have a good time. An extension of that is the public safety cadets. Again, unfortunately, due to COVID, those are on hold. They used to be known as the police explorers. Think Boy Scouts with a law enforcement twist. And we get a lot of kids involved in that, all the way up from 12 to, I think our oldest one was 19 when they went off to college, but they stayed with us through that. And again, it's a great process because they're around the department. They can help out with various functions, and they get to see and do things in the inner workings of the police department that most kids their age never would. That's basically the highlights of this program that it really talks about with us. I know it seems kind of short because there's a lot of these recommendations that are directed at the schools that fortunately or unfortunately, we do not have any interaction with in terms of setting policies or procedures and or necessarily being involved in the disciplinary procedures in any of the schools.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Rodney.
Thank you, Captain Oldham. And this is a question again, certainly for you, Captain Oldham, as well as Chief Kickoff. Can you identify, maybe just, again, off the top of your head, what are probably the 3 most pressing public safety concerns in our community right now?
Oh, I think it's probably, violent crime, I think is a pressing concern for us. Gun crimes are a top pressing concern for us. Both of those are really tied together. A lot of the violent crime we have is related to guns, and so those are probably the 2 big main ones that are really concerns for us. Our violent crime continues to tick up. We've mentioned that in other briefings that we've had. Gun crimes are ticking up. So those are our major concerns. Indiana has really liberal gun laws, so it's really hard to do much with gun type crimes because anybody can carry a gun. But those are probably the 2 most pressing concerns that we have.
Captain Oldham, did you have anything to add on to that, or?
No, over everything else, the violent crime is the biggest concern.
Okay, so
it exceeds.
So now I'd like to ask you, in terms of the work that you have done with the community, and again, I think I'm careful to preface my remarks, in a way that make sure that at least from the perspective of the public and the community, and that's just simply kind of an awareness that the pandemic has created so much that has limited our engagement with members of the public. So in essence, many of the things that are discussed in this particular pillar are things that, obviously you're restricted by based on just simply, us following, the recommendations from, certainly the mayor, but also what research is telling us about the COVID. But I want to make the point that I'd be interested to know what, from the perspective of the many communities that are around, what interdependent or interrelated goal do you have with these different communities that they take on some responsibility when it comes to violent crimes and gun crimes? So in other words, for the community, I think what's at the essence of this goal, and certainly I'm speaking to, my work as an equity professional, is about understanding that when we have interdependent goals, that means the community doesn't get theirs, in order for the police to actually be, effective, that means that whatever the goal is requires the community to get theirs and the police department to get theirs. If one doesn't get it, then the other doesn't get it. And so from this perspective, when we're looking at and talking about violent crimes and gun crimes, obviously the recognition is that that lay individuals don't necessarily, do policing regarding the crimes, but there are preventative things. There are things that you all recognize relative to your expertise as law enforcement officers that you can say, yeah, we need to make sure that our communities know and understand that this becomes the necessity. So in essence, what I'm trying to say is it will become necessary to take this particular pillar and think of the goals that you have to establish with the community as kind of a cornerstone or a linchpin. So until that actually happens, that symbiotic relationship happens, I will not be satisfied that we're meeting the pillars that are relative to these goals. And again, Scott, I know that you mentioned that, hey, when it comes to building bridges with, certain communities, that will require more work from the public. And that's something that I think, I would feel very comfortable having a discussion, with the mayor and our elected officials about. But when we look at these things, it's more than just where the police are present, but saying, hey, you know what? We're noticing violent crime in this particular community. So, per the goal that we're looking at, residents, the businesses, community groups, and so forth in that area, what is it that we can agree upon based on understanding, okay, if it's a reduction in these violent crimes, what is it that the police and the community can then jointly work together on to say, like, yeah, now we've got something there. So I'll be quiet and certainly look forward to hearing a reply.
So Rafi, you bring up a good point. Back in January and February, I had already started reaching out to a couple of different organizations to have them partner with us on ways to reduce violent crime and gun crime. If you actually look at all the statistics regarding that, a lot of those violent crimes happen behind closed doors. And so it's very difficult for the police to be able to prevent those types of things. So I had reached out to Middle Way and we were going to start working together on programs to help bring awareness and highlight what those types of crimes are so that we could work on reducing them. I had reached out to the Moms Demand Action for Guns to work on firearms safety. There are a lot of suicides, accidental shootings. And so, in fact, we secured a bunch more gun locks that we were going to give to them so that they could pass those out. And also talked to student groups because a lot of the violent crime also involves college age students that may have been out at the bars or whatever. And so, again, a lot of those types of crimes happen behind closed doors that make it very difficult for us to be able to do anything about. So having those types of conversations and those partnerships, discussing these things that are happening bringing awareness to them so that more people are aware to try to do things to prevent them is certainly would go along with this pillar. And that is something that we started, but everything got put on hold because of COVID. So I'm glad you brought that up, because those were steps that we had started to take to try to address those increases.
Yeah, if I can add one thing too, just as an aside, COVID has been a challenge, but frankly, it introduced some things to us we had never used before. And I don't know many people had. The video teleconferencing that we now have the capabilities, we're doing, instead of, one mass meeting a week or 2 mass meetings a week, we're having a bunch of small meetings with people, using Zoom. Sometimes it's Zoom, sometimes it's the Microsoft product, but it's become, and I hate to use the word like this, it's a little more intimate when you've got 2 or 3 people on a Zoom call than we've got 20 people in a room or 30 people passing through a room, and we can spend more time. And it's been a challenge. As the chief can tell you, I'm not very technically proficient. So we've all had to learn how to manipulate cameras and work different programs. But it's also opened some doors that, frankly, I don't think we would ever had, because some folks are willing to talk on Zoom, but they're not willing to drive across town to a coffee with a cop, or they're not willing to come to a meeting, in their evening, because for them, that's family time. So it's opened some doors for us. And I'm not saying we're making the same numbers, but I think we're making equally as important a connection as what we were with the bigger meetings.
And again, I want to thank, both of you for, responding. Again, just, certainly my work, with the school corporation, I'm definitely aware of the challenges, and certainly having a mother that's a school teacher who's not as tech savvy. I'm definitely aware, but I think if there's any takeaway, it is, my ardent wish, and certainly, my recommendation to make sure that, again, I think, we do a lot in this community, and there's a lot of opportunities to educate, the members of our community about, the things that you all know and see and observe from a perspective of law enforcement. And I think the saying is that, if you level with people, they can handle bad news. But and certainly from a perspective about just simply saying, hey, this is what we've noticed in terms of, gun crimes and violent crimes related to this particular community. And so, like Chief Kickoff stated, hey, these things are happening behind closed doors, but these are some of the signs, or at least positioning those professionals that, that work with victim assistance and some other things, to kind of get at saying, okay, well, we may not necessarily be the source, but we recognize Middle Way House and other professionals, that may be able to provide you some signs about, some things that, you might need to look for in terms of reporting. So we should be able to see maybe an increase in the number of calls or reports, and certainly a decrease in the number of specific types of crimes. And that's just a kind of a simple correlation. But I think, I want you to take away that I'm saying, unless you all have an interdependent goal with the members of the community, this pillar, again, presence is one thing. I think it's very important. Building relationships is the other. But this essentially is one of those that puts the members of the community and the police on the hook to say, we have a responsibility here to ensure that when it comes to, the examples that you've given us in terms of violent crime and gun crimes, we have something that we're both doing. And I think that obligates our elected officials to take stake in, as well as those people who claim to be leaders of the community, and those people who are truly the leaders of the community. So, and everything I just said doesn't require a comment. It was more of a comment or statement, not a question. Thank you, though.
I had a question, or more sort of like a concern or a thought. I'm trying to figure out what it is. I'm just curious about, from a mental health standpoint, as a social worker, what happens when the officers found the suicide, homicide incident that took place, I think it was last week or a week ago. So do they go through some type of mental health participation, or what do they do? Like, what happens during that or after that?
So we do critical incident debriefings. We have our social worker also reach out to the people who are on scene. We have a police chaplain that is available also to reach out and talk to people. And we have other services that we contract with out of Indianapolis, some police psychological stuff that we that we can also make available. That was a particularly difficult situation, and we did make sure that we checked in with all of the officers who were on scene, and our social worker also made contact with those officers to check in on them and make sure that any assistance they might need, that they would have that option available to them.
Okay. And then the following week, I believe there was another lady who committed suicide. I don't know if that was through gun related or if it's through like, or if she took some medicine. Was that another option, another time when a police officer had to find this individual? Did a police officer find her? Or was it a friend?
Well, McQueen, if I can, the unfortunate thing is that we deal with suicides almost daily.
Okay.
So it's not, I would love to tell you that it's a rare circumstance, but it's not.
It's not, okay.
And just natural cause deaths are unfortunate, but they occur every day. The one thing that we do have in place is a monitoring system, both a peer monitoring system, supervisory monitoring system to check in with the officers just to make sure that everything doesn't build on everything else and then eventually somebody gets in trouble. Again, the social worker, the chaplain, the supervisory response, the peer response is something that creates that safety net so that somebody doesn't get left behind in a psychological problem.
Okay. Yeah, it was just kind of like that compound trauma that I was thinking of. But it sounds like there is some parameters put in place to support our officers moving forward, like when these different incidences occur. Okay. Thank you. There's a question in the chat room. Nikki, did you see that?
Yes, I did. I would like to read Heather Lake would like her question and comment read out loud. So I'm just going to read what she has written here. She says, I have a statement about the conditions at the jail. I have heard that there are concerns about COVID-19 conditions and procedures. Are those being addressed and being made publicly accessible? Because as it is important for police to mask, it is even more urgent for those who work in closed environments such as the jail to be wearing masks. Or Mike Rooker, could you respond to Heather's question?
Yes, I think there are a few of us who could respond. The jail is under the jurisdiction of the Monroe County government. So I know it's confusing always with local government, but we don't have any jurisdiction over the jail. So you might want to go to a commissioner's meeting or the county council or take the issue up with one of your county representatives if you have a concern about the condition at the jail. So.
Thank you, Mike.
Any other comments or items in the chat room? Sounds like no. If everyone from the public has made comment that would like to, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the, is this September yet? September meeting of the Board of Public Safety. Good to see you all, and goodbye.
Thank you.